Okay, thank you, Eddie. Welcome to our fourth webinar here on Unreal Engine, specifically within the product design and manufacturing visualization workspace. Today we're going to do a really quick overview of Unreal Engine as it relates to this immersive realities space for design. So we're going to really take a look at how VR and AR in Unreal work for design review. So with that, let's get started here. So today's discussion, we're going to take a look at Unreal Engine and virtual reality. We're also going to look at VR hardware requirements. What's required to make sure that your project runs at the best performance necessary to make sure that you're getting what you need out of virtual reality so that it is a very believable and enjoyable experience. And we're going to take a look at some virtual reality and augmented reality starting points with Unreal Engine. Specifically, we'll focus more around the virtual reality template in that example. And we'll also look at some industrial uses that we're really seeing with these immersive realities. We're seeing virtual reality and augmented reality really changing the way CAD design is not only visualized, but experienced. This way of experiencing design in a very compelling and intuitive manner. So let's move forward here and take a look at some of the basics surrounding the world of virtual reality. So virtual reality faces a few challenges, and what these challenges are is how we define virtual reality, how we define a successful immersive experience that allows us to experience something in a virtual sense. So it really must be believable. It must feel like you are there. If we lose that believability, right away we lose the experience. So regardless of whether it's something for entertainment or something for a simulation or training or a different sector within a variety of different industries, if it's CAD design, for example, it must be believable. It must have real-world scale. It must have the feeling that the object you're viewing and experiencing is there. It needs to be interactive, and interactive can be anything from something as simple as some simple movements of moving your head around something or teleporting around something, or actually physically walking around an object in a room or a space. But it could also be more in depth where you can actually interact with the geometry. You know, maybe you're changing materials, or you're actually grabbing pieces of the geometry to explore them up close or removing them. Whatever that interactivity is, at the end of the day, it must match your movements. And again, if it's something as simple as moving your head, it needs to follow that real time, and it needs to add to that overall experience of that as well. So explorable. We want virtual reality to achieve the ability to allow for a personal experience. And this is what separates different kinds of applications or viewing on a flat two-dimensional screen from a virtual or an immersive experience like virtual or augmented reality. We need to allow for the infinite ways that something can be experienced. So if it's a CAD design, for example, we want people to be able to experience that product or that vehicle or that component on their own terms so that they can turn it around or manipulate it or even stick their head directly inside the object and be able to see the design as it were. And that's the cool thing about these immersive realities, is it really does allow people to experience on their own terms in their own way that they would want to do that. It allows for something that is very intuitive and is very second nature in that sense of a visualization technique. Immersive. And this here I've put at the bottom because at the end of the day, if we don't have the believability and we don't have the interactive, we're not going to have an immersive experience. So for a VR or an AR experience to be successful, it needs to be immersive. And in order to be immersive, you have to have that believability with that interactive component to really make sure that it brings you into what it is that you're experiencing, that environment or that CAD design or whatever that experience is, so that it really brings you in and immerses you into that virtual realm. So let's take a look at how virtual reality is transforming industries, how it's affecting business, for example. We're seeing virtual reality in many different realms. Of course, we talked about things like entertainment, but we're seeing it used extensively in areas like manufacturing, architectural, engineering, construction industries. We're seeing it also used in simulation and training. But here's what it really brings to transforming those industries. You get this idea of faster prototyping and design. So virtual reality really does reduce the product design risk. It allows for changes, it allows for iterations, it allows for interaction. And the cool thing about it as well is this idea of real-world scale to really bring a compelling story of design to the overall idea of prototyping something. So this idea of experiencing something in a real-world scale, a real-world environment, before it's even realized in a physical sense. Before we get into that physical prototyping, we can experience the design in a virtual sense. And Unreal Engine really brings that ability to allow you to prototype your CAD designs very quickly before you even get down that road of building a physical prototype. And of course, all of this really reduces the time to market. At the end of the day, this is a more efficient process that allows for better design simply because you can find issues perhaps and fix them quicker before even realizing a physical product. The idea of taking a CAD design, a product design, or a vehicle or a component of something and be able to experience that on real-world scale allows for better design overall, and it shortens or reduces that overall time to market. It also makes that pipeline of realizing your first physical prototype that much more quicker and efficient and effective in the end there as well. It increases business agility and flexibility. So what do we mean by that? Well, this idea of testing products in a virtual environment before committing to the physical product. But this could also be testing this with a group of subjects, right? A focus group, for example, testing a product and seeing if that virtual product as it exists is something that is going to cater to what it needs to cater to. It is going to serve what it needs to serve before even physically realizing it as well. So testing products in this environment really does increase this flexibility and agility for a variety of different industries. And of course, simulation and training. This is one of the biggest areas we see VR being utilized today. This idea of creating simulations or training environments for something, for example, like working a vehicle, maybe a crane, for example, before even sitting in that actual vehicle or that product or that crane. This ability to train in a very safe and controlled environment and have something that feels much like the real object. In that sense, maybe it is something like training for space or firefighters or training to operate a vehicle long before actually getting to that actual vehicle. And once they get into that environment, they're more comfortable, educated, and they've developed that sense of how everything works because of the virtual simulator or training environment that they've been given. And of course, we have the safety element. This ability to be in a controlled environment and be completely separated from the dangers of something like maybe firefighter training or a different physical environment that may bring a lot of risks to it. Simulation and training in a virtual environment certainly has all of that advantages to it to be able to experience something in a safe and controlled environment there as well. Let's jump forward here to take a look at, continuing on our talk of virtual reality and the basics here. Some of the equipment and all of this equipment here and how it relates to Unreal Engine. So we're going to see how we can use something like a head-mounted display, and what you constantly hear or you'll often hear is a head-mounted display referred to as something like an HMD, and that's literally is the acronym for a head-mounted display. And this typically is a high-end device enabled by a powerful PC or some hardware that will allow us to run that. Something like the high-end performance workstations that HP puts together for us, running some of the AMD Radeon Pro cards that are really tuned in to be able to enable virtual reality to run at that high performance rate that we need it to run on. So some of the devices, these head-mounted displays that we're working with here, for example, today I'm using the HTC Vive, and most recently, Vive just announced the Pro version of the Vive, so it's a whole new headset, much more advanced, higher resolution, and a bunch of new features on there. And as well, HP has unveiled their Windows Mixed Reality Pro Edition, which is a completely different headset there in its own realm as well. So both of these, though, will, of course, track head position and orientation. So that's what this idea of this HMD or head-mounted display. And controllers. This is something that you'll typically see as handheld devices that allow users to interact with their environment. And this can be interaction in the way of pointing at something, or actually using them to physically pick up a virtual object, or to transport around through a variety of different means, so that allows to walk forward, for example, or to actually teleport or beam to a different part in an area to interact with data. So a haptic gear. Haptic gear is this idea of wearable input devices that provide sensory feedback to the user. Now, a lot of the motion controllers that we see with head-mounted displays are haptic, in the sense that you'll get vibration, or you'll get this force feedback that will tell you something that may be happening with the experience that you're having within your virtual reality experience there. And of course, we touched on this idea of high-end hardware. You know, using a very high-end performance system is important, because virtual reality and augmented reality requires powerful hardware, especially when we get into really deep CAD data and we want to experience that in a VR sense. We're really going to need that high performance hardware to give us the proper believability or experience of that virtual reality experience. You know, experiencing CAD data, for example, you really need the high performance hardware to make sure that the experience is enjoyable. There is a thing called motion sickness, or as they call it, VR sickness, where if that frame rate isn't hit, that minimum frame rate of 90 frames per second, you're actually going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel what we call VR sickness, and it very much is this feeling of motion sickness there. So if we don't have the right high-performance hardware, the right high-performance GPU, much like the fine folks at AMD build with their Radeon Pros, we're going to have an issue here. We're not going to hit that smooth performance that we require to make virtual reality comfortable and believable. So here's some, we were talking about the HTC Vive Pro that was recently announced. There's an image of it there, and this provides, as they say, this true virtual reality freedom. And of course, HP with their Windows Mixed Reality headset, they've announced their Professional Edition recently, and there's the controllers that come with that one there as well. And I just wanted to point out some of the Radeon Pro cards that AMD, as being part of this webinar here, they have these amazing cards that Eddie mentioned at the beginning. Here's an example of that WX7100 and the WX9100 that are both highly VR capable, high performance cards to allow you to get into your immersive VR creation and experiences. So let's jump into Unreal Engine as the virtual reality and the augmented reality solution. So Unreal Engine really is built for performance without sacrificing quality. So VR requires complex scenes rendered at high frame rates, very high frame rates, and there really are no shortcuts. Unreal Engine allows us to realize this and create immersive virtual reality experiences by hitting those high frame rates. And again, I mentioned that Unreal can handle and is scalable to whatever your hardware is. The higher the performance hardware, the higher Unreal is going to be able to produce for you as well. And because Unreal Engine 4 comes from this world of the AAA game world, and it's built and designed for demanding applications like filmmaking and photoreal visualization, Unreal Engine meets all the requirements and provides a solid foundation to build upon for your virtual reality experiences. So to create believable and immersive experiences, Unreal Engine is the go-to solution for creating those as well. So both powerful and proven, the world's leading brands consistently choose Unreal Engine to bring their stories to life. And whether it is something like a AAA game title, or now we're seeing complete films being made in Unreal Engine, and we're seeing a lot of immersive CAD data, complete architectural data sets, complete cities even, down to complete vehicles full of complex CAD data, that we're able to have this immersive virtual experience with virtual reality and augmented reality, where we're able to experience these designs in very compelling manners. So a rendering pipeline within Unreal Engine, I mentioned that frame rate and how VR really requires a very high frame rate for that believability, that comfort, and that overall experience. We need to hit that minimum of 90 hertz, or that minimum of 90 frames per second, to be a comfortable virtual reality experience. That is the minimum that we need to hit. So most VR productions today use that as the minimum frame rate, and of course they'll go into much higher frame rates to realize that comfortability or that believability and immersiveness for their virtual reality experiences. So the higher the resolution for VR and the more challenging the VR scene, the more high performance you're going to require. And of course, hardware is important, but Unreal Engine brings that high performance caliber to make sure that you can visualize and experience your VR at the highest caliber possible. And of course, Unreal has tools that'll scale from very simple scenes, like we're going to see a CAD design here of a bike from SolidWorks that we can explore around by simply walking around. But we can also get into really extremely detailed scenes, very dense, multi-component scenes with hundreds of millions of polygons that we can experience in complex environments or even complex characters. Unreal brings this to you in a virtual or augmented sense as well. Of course, Unreal Engine has, as I touched upon, we're seeing films being built with Unreal Engine and very photoreal visualizations. This is because of the advanced cinematic post-processing capabilities right out of the box. So this idea of taking advantage of photoreal capabilities to be able to realize virtual reality in a very believable and very realistic sense, Unreal Engine brings that capability with it. And the great thing about Unreal Engine is this idea of this low friction startup, this idea of being able to realize very rapid iterations. Plug in your dev kit, whatever that may be that you prefer to work with, and go. When I create my virtual reality data sets within Unreal Engine, I connect my HTC Vive, and everything is there as expected. All the tools that I'm used to, but as well, when I want to build out a standalone application, it literally is as simple as just customizing my settings and also just hitting package that project, define where I want to put it, and I can now have a standalone, completely separate, launchable application that I could share with the world, whether it be a client to visualize data or someone else to experience their CAD design. Unreal Engine is the solution for being able to get to that point of experiencing a believable, immersive, virtual or augmented reality scene. And of course, frequent updates for the latest VR and AR hardware and software. Unreal Engine works on a very organic type of development system where we're seeing constant updates to the Unreal ecosystem so that we can take advantage of this as we go. So let's take a look at some video samples here. All of these things that we're looking at here, this is kind of a nice slick reel of some very cool and very small sample of some amazing work done out there with virtual reality and augmented reality right out of Unreal Engine. So, here I've put together some samples of different industries, mostly focusing on architectural design here, but also into the manufacturing world, whether it's automotive, but also looking at how we are able to create these beautiful virtual reality and augmented reality simulations here directly out of Unreal Engine. And all of this is built using Unreal Engine as its main core to be able to realize these scenes, to create these believable, very beautiful, compelling, immersive virtual reality scenes. And of course, these are created for a variety of different head-mounted displays. The HTC Vive is one of the most common that we see out there, used for its power and its capabilities. And Unreal Engine is able to create these beautiful scenes for a variety of different needs, whether it's a visualization sense or experiencing an architectural scene, or even for simulation and training. We're seeing lots of amazing samples out here where we are able to take advantage of some simulation and training in virtual reality and augmented reality to be able to learn before even experiencing the real thing. And Unreal Engine really brings that capability, that performance and that power to realize that, as well as that performance and that power to build very photorealistic, very believable virtual reality scenes. So let's jump into the Epic Games launcher here and take a look at some starting points for creating virtual reality or working with virtual reality in Unreal Engine. So you can see that I have a couple of different projects in here. I'm currently going to work with 4.19 Preview 4, which is the latest build. You can work with any version you want to here. It's the same idea that I'm going to be working with. Now, if I go ahead and I hit launch on the version that I want to work with, I'm going to get this option to browse to my project or to create a new project. While that's loading, I wanted to show something here. In the marketplace for Unreal Engine, there's some excellent, a whole variety of different pieces available here, whether they're models or materials, textures, sound effects, overall particle effects, whatever they may be. The marketplace is infinitely filled with lots of different places to grab data to start with. So one of the examples here is also if we start to type in something like VR, for example, in the search content, you'll find VR related different components, different data sets, assets, different little components that you can use in your project. So something I just wanted to point out that there are different starting points available in there as well. So let's go back to our project template here. So we can see that with the project browser in Unreal, I do have a couple of different projects that I've worked with, but I want to create a new project. In here you can see that I have, by default, the blank project, and this is sitting underneath this blueprint tab. Now we also have this C++ tab. We want to create a blueprint project. Blueprints in Unreal are essentially visual scripting. They're a node-based way of connecting code in a very visual format. And this is what we want to work with in here. Now you can see that the thumbnail is going to update and give us a preview as to what anything is. If I click on a vehicle, it's going to give me a kind of a vehicle starting point type of setup. A third person would give me a third person perspective of a different character. And I want to use this virtual reality template. This is an excellent starting point in here to build a VR project. Now, you can see that I'm going to leave everything default. I may want to just give the project a different name. Now, in the interest of time, I do have a project already created here so that we can jump in. And this is exactly what you get with the VR template. Now, you can see that I have all these little letter A icons around here. I'm just going to hit the G hotkey to turn off any of those extra components so that we can see what we're working with here with the base of the VR template. Now, the VR template is an excellent resource for starting out to build your own content in virtual reality within Unreal Engine. And the nice thing about this is it gives you a couple of different options. So we have option 1 on the left, which is a head-mounted display. As you can see, it's just a standalone head-mounted display kind of hovering in space. And all that would be is to build either a data set or a virtual reality experience around a standalone head-mounted display, or it gives you the option to have something like maybe a gamepad to work with that head-mounted display. Now on the right is a head-mounted display with some motion controllers, and we can see that we have a head-mounted display and we have some little hands present in here. The cool thing about this is that this can be swapped out, or those hands for that matter can be swapped out to be any kind of controllers for the headset you're working with. For example, I'm working with the HTC Vive, so I could make those hands into whatever I wanted them to be. I could customize those hands or make them into different props or get rid of them altogether or have them as the Vive controllers. Let's take a look at how this HMD and motion controller map works. The other great thing about this template is it actually gives you the full path as to where those starter maps exist. An HMD locomotion map on the left for a headset without any controllers, and this motion controller map on the right for a headset with motion controllers, and that's the one we want. So if you have the content browser on the bottom, at the root of the content level, we'll see something here called Virtual Reality BP, and that is that virtual reality blueprint type of setup or project that we're working with that we want to work with. So I'm just going to double click, go in there, and I'm going to go to Maps, and I can see underneath here HMD plus motion controller. It's telling me that I want the motion controller map, and there it is right there. So I'll just simply double click on that and load up that map. Now this is going to give me a really basic starting point in here. If I tumble around, in fact, what we're going to see that we have is a really basic scene. It says, of course, VR template, and we're working with a head-mounted display with some motion controllers in here. But you'll also see that it has this grabbing ability because it does give you the option to use some hands in here. Now this is a really simple scene. Again, this is a template. It's a starting point. You could use these objects, you could replace these objects, or you could get rid of them altogether, delete them out of the scene, and of course bring in your own objects, your own scene, your own CAD data, and that's what we want to look at today is some product design or maybe some manufacturing data here. But just to start with how the template works, what you would need to keep in mind is some of the basics here. This is going to give you all the basic setup for working with virtual reality and Unreal Engine. So for example, the cameras are pre-set up. You have a character to walk around pre-set up, and a character in the sense of it is going to track your head-mounted display. It's going to track your motion controllers as well and bring them live into your Unreal Engine project here to be able to utilize them to build your virtual reality setup in any way that you want to have it. The important thing to note on that as well is that I happen to have a VR headset set up. I'm working with the Vive here today. So I have a Vive and I have some controllers set up, and I want to make sure that I have that set up when I'm working with VR in Unreal. Now, I don't absolutely need to have that, but really, if I'm going to create with VR, you want to have your head-mounted display and your controllers to be able to see how it's going to work. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to preview it or experience it as you work. Now, Unreal is smart enough to detect if you have a head-mounted display connected to it. If you don't, you won't see this VR preview, or you will see it, but it'll be grayed out. It won't be selectable. You'll have just something like the default setup here, which if I hit play is just going to let me just see this world, but not in a VR sense. So I want to grab this little pull-down menu here and set it to VR preview. And in doing that, it's actually going to launch a VR preview here. So I do have my head-mounted display here. And I also have some controllers here, which you can see that I have a hand sitting inside the scene in here that I can work with. And I do have the other one. You have to excuse me. I'm using my hands, and I have a headset going here while I'm recording this. But anyways, so I'm actually able to see my environment, and I'm also able to interact with or move around in the environment if I need to. So what the VR template is going to give you is right out of the box, it's going to give you some motion controllers, things like hands, which you can swap them into changing them into different things. And it's also going to give you the ability to teleport around in the scene if you want to be able to do that as well. So at any time now, because I've selected that VR preview, I can go ahead and just hit that and be able to launch into kind of a standalone version of my preview here and be able to work with it as I go. So I wanted to show the VR template really simply here as to how it works within Unreal Engine and what it provides for you. And it provides the real basic starting points, and you can customize, of course, all of these things. Again, like I said, replace the geometry or delete it all and bring in your CAD data or your data that you wanted to work with in here. So the VR template is a really excellent starting point. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at another project that I have set up with some actual real CAD data from SolidWorks right inside Unreal Engine using the VR template, and how I can manipulate or move around within that scene, and how I can work with that data live within Unreal Engine as well. And what I also want to do is show how you can build out a project. So I'm just going to switch over to that project here right now. So here we are. I have this project that I've brought in here, and this is an important project to look at for a couple of reasons, as we'll see. This data set is created here so that we are working with SolidWorks data. This is a full CAD data set brought directly into Unreal Engine via Datasmith, and I'm able to work with this CAD data live inside Unreal Engine. And what I want to do here is create a virtual reality project. So just to show you what we're getting here, I'm just going to switch over to my launcher, and I've actually created this simple little SolidWorks VR starting point here, or this is my little project that I've put together. I brought the motorcycle in, and we've actually built out a VR version. Now there's two versions. I can click desktop and just work without VR, but in this case we want to have some fun and actually explore the data in VR. So we can see now that I'm using my headset to be able to move around in space, and of course I have my Vive controller in here as well that I can access to be able to move around in space as well if I need to. And here we go. So what I want to do is actually just teleport around, and maybe actually, maybe not that far away, but bring it in a little bit closer to the bike. And then if I rotate around, I can start to look at my data up nice and close. So if I want to get into maybe the front frame here, I can actually stick my head right inside that frame if I wanted to do that. So I'm actually just going to spin around and maybe take a look at a different part of the bike here, maybe from the top down. And we can see that I can get a bunch of different angles in here. And I'm actually able to work with the data wherever it is that I want to kind of teleport to or move around to. For example, here I'm just going to maybe teleport in a little bit further away and maybe get a little bit closer here to the bike. Let's just zoom right in to maybe around the front tire here. And what I can start to do is maybe get in a little bit closer into some of the other details that I have in here. I'm just going to get right to the side down in here so that I can see things like the top view of the bike here, and something really cool. I can actually stick my head right inside the gas tank and have a look around. And this allows me to kind of experience this data in a very different way. So I'm actually, rather than looking at my CAD designs flat and on a screen, I'm actually able to stick my head right inside that data. I can even get right inside the engine here as well to take a look at different components. So I can see how the data is actually working in real world scale. I can even mimic sitting on top of the bike and maybe taking a look at the full scale of this. So it's always, of course, difficult to explain this when you're looking at it on a flat screen, but of course, looking at it in virtual reality is a very amazing experience to experience your designs, your CAD data, in a very compelling way. So this idea of this experiential design is what Unreal really brings with it, especially with a tool like Datasmith, which I've used here to bring my data live into Unreal Engine so that I'm able to actually take a look at it a number of different angles and different ways to work with my data here and see how the data overall works here as I'm visualizing it, or for that matter, experiencing the data as I go here. So I'm able to actually stick, like I said, I can stick my head right inside the engine if I wanted to. I can look at the data from all different angles in here. And simply what I've done is I've just built this out. Let me just move back out here into a bit, just kind of move into outer space here. And what I'm actually going to do is flip back into my project so we can see how we've created that here. So you have to excuse me, I have to take the headset off and get my microphone repositioned here. And I'm now back into my Unreal scene so that I can work with the data as it's built. So the cool thing about this data set is, again, this is right over from SolidWorks, and using the Datasmith plugin, I was able to import the CAD directly into Unreal Engine here, and we're able to work with this and actually build this into a very cool VR project that lets us experience the data or this motorcycle design in real world scale so that we can experience it virtually before we even realize it physically, right? So it's an excellent way to really explore and experience your designs here. And then what I've done is I've simply set this up. This is using the VR template, and then built this out as a VR project. So we built this as a simple little standalone project, a desktop version, and this very simple kind of walk around VR version. So we'll come to that in a moment as to how that was created. A very cool little side story here. Just recently at an event, what we had was at SolidWorks World, we had an actual motorcycle designer put the headset on and dive around inside this motorcycle, and he actually found a couple of different design flaws, things that maybe a chain that might have collided with an area of the bike that may not work properly in the real world. And he was able to identify those areas that could be corrected very quickly by experiencing that design in virtual reality. So that was very cool to see a real motorcycle designer kind of crawl around on his hands and knees and find issues with the bike that would be more difficult to find simply in working in a kind of a flat screen workflow. So we have our bike here in Unreal. If I want to take this now and build this out to something that I can experience in virtual reality as a standalone virtual reality launchable app, much like we just played around with there, how would I do that? Well, in Unreal Engine, it makes it very simple for you. So simply put, what we would do is we would set our project over here. So you can see that I have over here underneath my file area here, I have down below our project access points, but I also have this thing here called package project. And that's what I'm working with in here. So I want to go down and take a look at the package settings. So I'll just click that, and we can see that the package settings here We have pretty much everything is left to the default setting for the most part. And maybe what we might want to do is customize some of the different things, like maybe put in a custom thumbnail into here. Like here we have a little project thumbnail of the bike. We may even want to put in the project name, or we may even want to put in our creators' names as a company, for example. Whatever it is that we want to put in here as a publisher or a creator of that project. I'm just going to get out of those project settings, and we'll go back to File, Package Project. Now, I had packaged this for Windows as a 64-bit executable, and the way that I would do that is just simply go to Package Project, Windows, 64-bit, and I can simply launch that and begin to package this up into my VR build. Now it's going to ask me for where I want to put that. I would define a directory in here. In this case, it's going to give me, once it's built, something like this project structure with a launchable, a standalone application that can be shared very easily. So that's all that's happened there, is I've just literally said save to folder, and I've launched that very quickly. Depending on how complex the scene is, it is building out its own standalone application when it does this. So I want to bring up my folder here as well, just to show you what you would get. So I called this one here SolidWorks Final. You're going to get something like this Windows No Editor, because it is just a standalone application, nothing to do with a launchable Unreal editor in that sense. This is a project that you could share with clients, with friends. You could share it online. You could share it, maybe on an online store even, or on a website or someplace that you might want people to experience your designs. They could simply do that and be able to go in and be able to launch that project and work with it, much like I just did there as well. And that's exactly what it is. It's going to give you these folders in here with which Unreal Engine builds. You don't have to worry about any of those. But this is the little SolidWorks, I've called it SolidWorks, but this is the little launchable application that we can launch, and we can explore and experience our CAD design in that sense. So it's a standalone application that lives outside of Unreal, and again, it's very portable, very shareable way to work. So very easy to work with VR in Unreal Engine when we have these tools like the VR template. And that's exactly what's going on here. We're using the VR template, importing CAD data in. Of course, we spent some time. If you're interested in how the materials or the lighting is applied, you can watch some of our other webinars. But in this case here, we're literally using a template. We've brought in some CAD data, and all we're doing is packaging that out very simply, like I've just shown there. We would simply go to File, Package Project, and you would select to where you want this to go. If you're going to something like a Mac format or a different format, you can simply do that. In this case, I just went to Windows 64-bit, and it's a shareable standalone application that launches as its own VR app. And this is an excellent way to experience that data or share your experience of your CAD design with anyone at that point. Okay, so we're going to move on here and take a look at a couple of other things related to Unreal Engine and creating virtual reality, and also how Datasmith works within Unreal Engine here as well. So now I want to touch upon the HP VR Launch Kit for Unreal Engine. This is something that was recently announced, and it is an excellent piece of kit here that we've had Epic Games and HP partner together to provide. So what is it? Well, it's a toolkit for Unreal Engine for streamlined virtual reality development and deployment. And what this gives you is the ability to profile for optimized hardware, which will in the end significantly reduce the time required to transform your CAD designs into real-time VR experiences. So this is a full toolkit designed to work in conjunction with high-end hardware like HP produces, with the high-end performance of Unreal Engine, so that you're able to jump in quickly and be able to streamline your virtual reality development and get whatever it is you're trying to achieve, whether it's an architectural visualization or experiencing CAD data, for example, for a motorcycle, that you can jump in and actually experience that data in that sense. And the toolkit, or the launch kit, is built to give you these basic tools in there. So let's take a look at who it's for. Well, it's for anyone from the product design world, or maybe an architectural engineer or construction world, any of these professionals who are either experienced in VR and need to streamline their development processes. So This is the idea of being able to jump right into Unreal Engine, have a series of examples, and also some very effective profiling tools to make sure that everything's going to run smooth and give you the best performance possible for whatever it is that you're trying to create for your virtual reality environment. And we've also created this for people that are brand new to virtual reality. Someone that needs something very simple and fast to get into and build their design visualization process for a virtual reality application. So whether you're a pro out there, a seasoned veteran, or someone that's brand new to this launch kit is for you. This toolkit brings a comprehensive set of tools to allow you to realize your virtual reality goals right out of Unreal Engine. So what's included? As I mentioned, we have this idea of a virtual reality performance profiler that comes with it. And this works right within Unreal Engine, and what it's going to do is determine the optimal computer configurations needed for VR deployment here. So this profile can tell you your overall configuration of your hardware and give you output as to how that's going to perform for your virtual reality content creation. And of course, I mentioned some sample data sets. So what we include with this is the ability to take some sample virtual reality experiences right out of the box that you can jump in and experience, but as well as things like those VR templates and more to come as well, and also learning materials. So there are some basic demo sets that come in there. For the architectural world, we have some SketchUp, Revit, AutoCAD, and 3ds Max data sets that you can jump right into Unreal Engine and explore and experience. And as well on the manufacturing side, we have a nice SolidWorks data set, that motorcycle, for example, that we can jump in and explore and be able to play with as a real data set to create something for virtual reality right out of Unreal Engine. And Unreal Engine within the HP VR Launch Kit also comes with a trial of Datasmith, so you can try it yourself. You can leverage the sample data or import your own CAD designs and bring your own files right into Unreal Engine and take advantage of the power of Datasmith with the ability to bring CAD data live right into Unreal Engine and be able to create virtual reality experiences right out of the box with your own data. So let's take a look at Datasmith. You know, Eddie talked about this at the beginning there. I just want to take a look at summarizing what Datasmith is here and take a look at some of the key points in here. So Datasmith, frictionless CAD workflows. So Unreal and Datasmith, we have 3 key points there. We need to have accuracy in translating that CAD data. We need to be able to experience that data anywhere, and that's what Unreal Engine brings for you, this ability to create augmented or virtual reality experiences of your data. And we want you to be able to ramp up quickly. And Datasmith brings that with Unreal Engine. This idea of conquering complexity for engineers and designers. You can save hours, days, even weeks on the idea of translating or making your CAD data fit by having Datasmith take care of this behind the scenes and having it optimize that data and bring it over. So in the end, you can save a lot of time by making sure that this non-destructive workflow brings your CAD data in as you expect it and as you need it to be. So Datasmith Direct Import. I just wanted to put in a couple of different samples. This is an example of some of the file formats that are supported. And of course, this list is constantly growing. There will be more as time goes on. But here's what we have the ability to support directly into Unreal Engine with Datasmith as well. So a traditional workflow, Eddie talked about this a little bit. You know, this idea of taking data from a CAD package and maybe you have to jump into something else like Max or Maya or whatever it may be, and you need to merge the objects and reduce the polygons and go on, this whole translation, and be able to export into a format that Unreal Engine will understand. Well, Datasmith takes all of this and does it all for you. And recently we've also included Python into the Datasmith workflow, which will allow you to customize what components you want or don't want, or maybe how you want something to be reduced as far as the polygonal count. It really is unlimited. It's up to you to how you maybe want to script that translation of that data over into Unreal Engine. So Python is now part of the Datasmith workflow. So I want to thank you for joining me today and taking a look at this quick overview of being able to work with CAD designs or data of any kind for that matter in a sense of virtual reality and augmented reality right out of Unreal Engine. So I want to thank our sponsors there. I want to thank HP and AMD and also HTC Vive for helping us achieve our virtual reality goals and giving us the hardware that's required to really get the most compelling and beautiful virtual reality data sets that we can out of Unreal Engine.